My son said, "You are not my real dad. Mom's boyfriend is better." Those words shattered me in a way I cannot fully explain. It was not just a sentence. It was a knife twisted slowly into my chest. I stood there frozen, staring at the boy I had raised, the boy I had carried on my shoulders when he was little, the boy whose scraped knees I had bandaged, whose homework I stayed up late helping with. And yet, in one cruel moment, he erased me as if I had been nothing more than a stand-in until someone better came along. I remember the look in his eyes when he said it. Cold, detached. Almost like he was repeating something someone else had told him. His lips curled slightly with defiance, as if he wanted to hurt me, as if he wanted to make a point. And the point landed. It struck so deeply, I felt my body tense with the urge to shout, to shake him, to make him understand who I had been for him all these years. But I did not. I forced myself to stay still, to keep my face calm, because showing the storm inside me would only give power to his words. In my mind, I replayed every sacrifice I had made. The long nights working overtime so he could attend the best private school. The birthdays I planned with so much detail just to see him smile. The car I bought him, shiny and safe, so he could enjoy his freedom without worrying about money. Each memory stacked up like a tower, and with one sentence he knocked it down as if it had never existed. I felt humiliated. I felt betrayed. But more than that, I felt invisible. To be told that his mom's boyfriend was better than me, a man who had only recently walked into his life, cut deeper than any rejection I had ever experienced. I thought I had built something lasting with my son. I thought love and consistency mattered more than blood. I thought he saw me as his father, even if the world reminded him that biologically I was not. My heart begged me to argue back, to demand recognition, to tell him that real fathers are not measured in DNA but in years of devotion. But my pride, my wounded pride, told me to stay silent. I simply nodded, as if his words were nothing more than air. But inside I felt myself cracking apart. A line had been drawn in our relationship, and once words like that are spoken, there is no way to go back to what we had before. That night I lay awake staring at the ceiling, hearing his voice again and again. "You are not my real dad. Mom's boyfriend is better." The sentence became a drumbeat in my head, each repetition heavier than the last. I felt like I was losing him, like I had already lost him, and I could not decide if the pain came from his words or from the fact that a part of me believed them. In that moment, something in me hardened. I realized love cannot survive on one side alone. I realized that being taken for granted was no longer something I could endure. And I realized that my role in his life had been reduced to nothing more than a bank account he could dismiss when convenient. That was the night everything began to change. I remember the sacrifices in vivid detail, almost like a reel playing in my mind, reminding me of everything I poured into raising him. The late nights hunched over paperwork, the long hours I volunteered to take at work, just so his tuition would be covered at that expensive private school. I told myself it was worth the exhaustion every time I saw him wearing that uniform with pride, every time I saw the opportunities that opened up for him because of the education I had fought to give him. I think about the car, too, that shiny used sedan I spent months saving up for. I could have bought myself something new, something nice, but instead I poured it into him. I wanted him to have safety, freedom, and confidence when he drove. I can still picture his smile the day I handed him the keys, how he hugged me and promised he would never forget what I did for him. I clung to that moment like proof that all my efforts mattered. that I wasn't just standing in for a real father, but that I was one. But as the days went by, I began to notice a shift. His tone grew sharper. The respect he once showed me started to erode. Little digs, little comments, things no son should say to a man who raised him. At first I told myself it was just teenage rebellion, hormones, the natural pushback of a kid trying to become independent. But then I saw the way his mother's boyfriend looked at me, smug and dismissive, whispering in corners, laughing with him as though I were the outsider. Slowly, I realized those weren't just his words. They were planted seeds, seeds of disrespect, watered by a man who had no idea what it meant to be there through scraped knees, sleepless nights, and homework battles. The betrayal didn't come like a punch. It was slower, heavier, like sand filling my lungs. To be replaced not by someone better, not by someone who earned it, but by someone who simply walked in and decided to claim the title I had fought for all these years. It was unbearable. It wasn't just rejection. It was erasure. It was as if the years I gave, the love I poured, the sacrifices I made never existed. What cut the deepest was the realization that my ex had always wanted this. She had always minimized my role, brushing off my efforts as just what you should be doing, never acknowledging how much I gave. And now, through her silence, she let another man slip into the role, feeding my son the idea that I wasn't enough. I sat there with all these memories crashing over me, each one burning with bitterness now. The birthdays I planned, the school trips I paid for, the lectures I gave to keep him on track. They all felt stolen, as if they belonged to someone else now. And I kept asking myself the same question. How do you compete with someone who never carried the weight, but gets to claim the reward? In that moment, it hit me. I wasn't just losing my son's respect. I was losing the very identity I had built around being his father. And that kind of loss isn't just painful. It changes you. I decide to step back. I do not argue, and I do not yell. When my son looks at me with that smugness, I can tell it does not really belong to him. It belongs to the words his mother's boyfriend whispered into his ear. He thinks he is being strong. He thinks he is standing up for something. But all I see is a child repeating someone else's bitterness. That is the moment I tell myself, no more. If I am not his real dad, as he says, then let him live without the things I provide. The very next morning, I call the private school. The same school I have been paying for since he was a little boy. I remember writing those first checks, proud that I could give him the kind of education I never had. I remember sitting in the back row of the auditorium, watching him play the lead in a school play, tears in my eyes because I believed I had given him opportunities beyond my own reach. But this time, my voice is steady when I tell the school there will be no more payments. The woman on the phone hesitates. She asks if I am sure. I say yes, very sure. It feels like cutting a cord that tied me to a dream that was never really mine to hold. When my son gets home later, I take the car keys from the counter. He looks at me, confused at first. I tell him simply that the car is no longer his. He laughs, thinking it is a joke. But I walk past him, put the keys in my pocket, and leave it at that. The very next day, the car is gone, sold to a man who needed it more. Watching that car drive away does not hurt me as much as I thought it would. What hurts is the silence in my son's eyes when he realizes I meant every word. He storms into my room, demanding to know how I could do this. His voice cracks with anger, but behind the anger is fear. I do not yell back. I do not explain myself in a long speech. I just tell him that if I am not his father, then he cannot keep living off what I provide as one. My words land like a stone dropping into a well. Heavy, irreversible. He stares at me as if I am a stranger, but for once I feel no need to prove myself to him. That night, I lie awake, staring at the ceiling. My chest feels hollow, but not from guilt, from clarity. I realize I spent years trying to buy his love, trying to secure my place in his life, with sacrifices he never truly saw. And now, with a few words that were not even his own, he erased all of it. For the first time, I allow myself to stop fighting for someone who has already chosen to walk away. The backlash comes almost immediately. My phone rings, and it is my ex. Her voice is sharp, filled with venom, as if I am the villain who destroyed everything. She calls me heartless, cruel, and selfish. She says I embarrassed our son, that I humiliated him by taking away the things he loved. I listen, calm, because I know what she is really angry about. It is not about the car. It is not about the school fees. It is about the control she thought she had over me slipping away. For years, she used our son as a bridge to reach into my pockets, to make me bend, to remind me of my obligations. But this time I refused. Then, as if on cue, her boyfriend gets involved. He sends me a message, long and arrogant, painting himself as the better man. He writes about how I failed as a father, how he is there for my son in ways I never could be. I almost laugh when I read his words. Because for all his talk about being better, not once has he pulled out his wallet for tuition. Not once has he spent sleepless nights trying to figure out how to afford opportunities for a boy who was not even his blood. He enjoys playing the hero in conversations, but when it comes to action, he is silent. Meanwhile, I start to notice a shift in my son. The confidence in his voice falters. He does not brag about the boyfriend anymore. Instead, he becomes quiet. He realizes piece by piece that words are not the same as reality. His mother's boyfriend may have his attention, may even fill his ears with promises, but he is not standing in line to cover private school fees. He is not calling around to find a replacement car. The silence from their side begins to echo. And for once, my son feels it. My ex tries to threaten me with legal action. She says she will take me to court. She says I cannot just walk away. Her voice shakes when she says it, though, and that is how I know it is nothing but fear disguised as anger. Because deep down, she knows I was never obligated to give beyond what was written. Everything extra, the school, the car, the vacations, the gifts, that was me choosing to give. And I am done giving to people who only spit in my face. I stand my ground. I tell her firmly that she can do whatever she wants, but I will not be manipulated anymore. If her boyfriend is so much better, then let him step up. Let him prove it with more than just sweet words whispered in the dark. My son is old enough to see the truth now, and truth is something I no longer have to force. It reveals itself in the silence, in the absence, in the empty promises that follow. For the first time in years, I am not begging to be valued. I am not pleading for gratitude. I am standing tall in the decision to stop letting them take from me, and in that stance, I feel something I had not felt in a long time. Freedom. The aftermath was quieter than I expected. At first, there was noise, blame, and threats, but slowly everything went silent. My son's world began to change in ways he did not anticipate. The private school he once bragged about became a memory. His friends, who admired the car I bought him, stopped inviting him out. His grades slipped, not because he was not capable, but because the comfort and support he had taken for granted were gone. For the first time, he understood that everything he once called his came at a cost, one that I was paying. I did not gloat. I did not rub his losses in his face. Instead, I watched from a distance, and then, one night, my phone lit up with a message from him. It was not short. It was long, almost desperate. He apologized, saying he did not realize how much I had sacrificed for him. He admitted that the boyfriend he once praised was nothing more than a man who enjoyed the idea of being wanted, but never wanted the responsibility that came with it. He confessed he was wrong, that his anger and rebellion had blinded him. Reading his words, I felt a mixture of emotions. Part of me wanted to hold on to the anger, to remind him of how easily he had cast me aside. But another part of me felt a strange peace, because I did not need to punish him anymore. Life had already done it. The reality he faced was harsher than any words I could have spoken, and the fact that he realized it on his own mattered more than anything I could have forced him to see. His mother tried once more to pull me back in, but her voice no longer had power over me. I no longer felt obligated to prove myself or to fight for a place in their lives. I had done my part. I had given more than was required, more than was appreciated, and I had nothing left to prove. She could keep her boyfriend. My son could choose who he wanted to admire, but I would no longer bleed myself dry to earn respect that should have been given freely. So I turned inward. I focused on myself. I rebuilt the parts of me I had neglected while trying to please everyone else. I reconnected with friends I had pushed aside. I pursued passions I had long abandoned. Slowly, I found joy in the simple things. Quiet mornings, peaceful nights, the satisfaction of standing on my own without being drained by constant disrespect. My son's messages kept coming, each one softer, more remorseful than the last. But I did not rush back. I did not try to fix everything. Instead, I allowed him to sit with his realization. Because the greatest lesson I could give him was not through more sacrifices, but through absence. The absence of my effort, my money, my endless patience. That absence spoke louder than anything I could say. And in the end, that became my revenge. Not the kind that comes with fire and rage, but the kind that comes with silence, with peace, with the knowledge that they finally saw what they had lost. My greatest lesson was learning that love, real love, is not proven by how much you can endure. It is proven by knowing when to stop giving it to people who do not deserve it.